Brian. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be presenting our annual action plan on equity, anti-racism, and anti-oppression. Just in terms of the cover to the actual action plan, you'll notice that we reference elements such as the Ontario Human Rights Code, on Ontario's Education Equity Action Plan, and our own strat plan to situate the work. The work that we are doing on equity, anti-racism, and anti-oppression is aligned and embedded in those key documents. This is the second year that we've been able to present an annual action plan. And the work outlined by the province really is in four major categories. So we have classroom and school practices, data collection, reporting, and integration, leadership, governance, and human resources, and organizational culture change. So I'll turn it over to Amy. I know that we all had an opportunity earlier today to engage in some learning around this work. But Amy will take us over the broad strokes of the work this year. You're going to get to see a little bit of feedback from some of our objectives from last year, as well as some high-level views of the work plan for the current school year. So Amy, over to you.
Okay, thanks. Hi again, everybody. I'm back to present the annual equity action plan. And as Ronald just outlined, it is the second one for our district. So that's kind of exciting. We can see if we look back, we can look back at last year's and see what progress we've made. Ronald mentioned the 4 pillars from the ministry that we are still aligned with in terms of our second year. And I am going to take you through sort of the highlight bullets of highlight for each of those pillars, maybe not right in that order. And then I'm going to end with what I call 4 contrasts that I've been learning about in my role over the last 2 years as I start my third. So I'm actually going to start with leadership, governance, and human resources. And this year's equity action plan is similar to last year's, because one of the major thrusts of it is ongoing facilitated professional learning sessions like we had this morning together. And those are some of the target areas, but really we want the professional learning and dialogue to be system-wide and district-wide. And kind of like we did this morning, centering ourselves, situating ourselves within our own identity and learning about ourselves and our power and our privilege and our areas of learning needs. So those are some of the ways that we are, that facilitated professional learning opportunities are happening. They've been happening throughout senior admin, on the secondary PD day earlier in the fall. This is the second year for having equity, anti-racism, and anti-oppression training for our new teachers through the NTIP program. We've had some conversations already this year as a group here, trustees, and you don't have to have me here to continue your professional learning. I liked Susan's ideas this morning about bringing in someone from OPSPA and the resources that you have as an association, and our system team. We've been really focusing on embedding equity, anti-racism, and anti-oppression across all of the system principles and all of the TELTs and instructional coaches and special services consultants, etc., because they are the ones who now are continuing to spread the work throughout the school. It really can't be a one-person job. It's not a one-person job. Equity work is all of our work. Also, looking back over last year, we created 3 new APs. No, sorry, we created 2 new APs, and we heavily revised 3 others. So we created a religious accommodation administrative procedure and an anti-racism and anti-oppression administrative procedure. Those were brand new. And we overhauled dress code, as is happening across the province, gender identity and gender expression, which we formerly called transgender student policy, which in and of itself wasn't inclusive. Maybe I'm forgetting one there, or maybe it's just 4. Okay. So 4 new APs were created over the course of last year, and this year we're implementing them now into our schools. So those are kind of the highlights of leadership, governance, and human resources. just a few pictures. You can see in the picture on the left-hand side, that's his name is Avi Awalia. He's from a company in Toronto called Unlearn. He came and did some facilitated learning with our system team one day, which deeply embeds critical thinking, the global competencies, the 6 C's, in looking at images and unlearning some of the things we have learned in our history and our education. The top right is from Fold. That's the Festival of Literary Diversity, and that's something, a resource that we have purchased across the district for all of our teachers to use, so that when they start saying, how do I start? Doing this anti-oppression teaching, that's one of the places to start. That particular webinar, which was a 4 o'clock webinar earlier in November, was on approaching anti-racism with kids, younger children. And of course, our ongoing Indigenous education department's work around Indigenous ways of knowing and learning. And that particular one was a paddle project. And those are all a result of professional learning sessions that have happened over the last year. The second one is data collection, integration, and reporting. And I did want to share this good news with you. It is in your package. But last year, we created a goal that I shared with you at this time last year, that we wanted to, these were our goals for participation rates in the demographic data project, which you probably know is occurring across the province. And so we wanted to have an 80% participation rate in students from grade 4 to grade 12 to tell us all kinds of things about who they are. And we wanted to have a 30% participation rate in kindergarten to grade 3. And that information was collected through parents. We sent home all of the questions, and we don't ask as many for the youngest kids in our system, but we sent home all of the questions to the parent emails. And those are our participation rates. You can see the numbers that are up there. So we met our goal. We exceeded our goal in both cases. We got almost 82% participation rate from grades 4 to grade 12. And I was very, very surprised and happy to see such a high participation rate from our families, our kinder to grade 3 parents of students in kinder to grade 3, and giving us very reliable and valid data from which we will begin to be able to make decisions once we're finished analyzing it. Those are, so we contract research companies out to help us collect that data. And I'm not a researcher, but they tell me that is very, very reliable data. We will have a very clear picture of who our students are that we simply will not be able to ignore, right? So when we talk about, are we a homogeneous community or are we not? My very cursory look at some of the data is that we are more diverse than we might think, including in terms of racial identity, religious identity, US LGBTQ, gender identity and expression, and sexual orientation. But the researchers aren't done scrubbing the data, and that's not my area of expertise. So I'm waiting for that to come back, but I will be able to come back and report on that later this school year. But very pleased with the participation rate. Some boards, especially in the primary grades, K to 3, were getting data that they couldn't even use, you know, between 5 and 10% response rate. And we have almost 50% of our parents answering about their students. So this is where we are at this year. So we're continuing with the demographic data reporting. As I said, right now, the research companies that we have partnered with are scrubbing and cleaning the data, and then we'll be able to provide us with an analysis of that data. So as I said, I will be able to come back and report, here's who we are, K to 3, 4 to 8, 9 to 12, in terms of all of those things that we talked about this morning on the identity wheels. Here's how our students identify, right? Across the system, and we should be ready to go late winter, early spring with that information. We are collecting as well this winter climate data, and that's something we've been collecting now for over 10 years. We've partnered with the Learning Bar since 2009. Hi. Hi, ladies. And so we're doing that again this school year. So the last time we collected that data was we were doing remote learning, right? It was 2021 and we were in the April break. That's what I called it that year. Remember, we didn't have a March break, we had an April break. So and then we didn't come back, right? So we collected that data then. And so we're collecting that again this year in the winter, and we have a lot of historical data to analyze in terms of climate data. And the third sort of piece of data that we're considering collecting or looking at is called an equity audit. And that one could actually belong in the first category, leadership, governance, and human resources, because again, it would be an outside agency coming in and looking at our policies and procedures and employee services and so on and so forth, and pointing out areas for us as an organization that we might need to take some next steps in. This is interesting. I'll be interested to see the results for this. So something to this effect is going to be the question that we ask every student in grade 4 to grade 12 in terms of climate data or their perception of school. That climate data is often called perceptual data. That's what EQAO calls it. And so this will be interesting. We've never asked this before of our students. And it will be something, the researchers will help me with the wording and whether it's going to be a rating scale or just a yes or no or what it's going to be. But there it is, something along the lines of, do you see yourself, your identity, and your culture reflected in school, in class, in school, and in your learning materials, all right? There was a version of a question like that on EQAO last year. And I forget the exact numbers. Krista and I actually looked at them together, primary, junior, and secondary perceptual data through EQAO. And it wasn't, I don't know what you would expect, like it was under 50% of our students.
Was 51.4. We just had it in our last presentation.
There we go.
I was going to say
4.
We're right on it.
There we go.
We literally just slide.
Okay, there we go. So, but that means half our students don't, right? Half our students don't. So once again, we've created what seems like maybe a lofty goal. We're hoping to see higher than that, maybe around 55%, based on the work we're doing right now in terms of creating new resources, using new resources, and see what the students tell us in the spring. But that'll be interesting to see. So school and classroom practices, the business of what we do. And this morning I was able to speak to two of these in particular, 2 guidelines, the one on responding to discrimination and the one on gender identity and gender expression. There's another one on selecting resources, reviewing resources, deciding what ones we should get rid of, because we've been teaching them probably since, definitely since I was in high school, and maybe earlier than that, right? The thrust of that one is that through an anti-oppression lens, we need to be using accurate and diverse representations of Black, Indigenous, racialized, and marginalized people to be those windows out to the world, right? Resources for our students should be mirrors. They should be able to see themselves. That's this part. And windows out to the wider world that might be broader than what they're seeing just right in their classroom or on their playground at recess. I thought I'd show you a couple of other things that we've been developed. I'll pull up this one, which are just resource banks. This one is on race, religion, and culture. And again, these are tools that are now being implemented across the school, and it's just, where can I start? I'm a kinder teacher. It's December. I want to teach a little bit about Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, not just Christmas. Where can I start? Here's where they can go. Okay. And that goes all the way from kinder to grade 12. Yes, Ava.
It's Taylor.
Taylor, sorry. I even
No, Taylor. So do teachers have access to this? Like, is this something that they could access whenever they want?
Yeah.
Could I?
Yeah, it's on our website.
Okay,
It's public for everybody.
okay, that's awesome. Okay.
I'll show you that. But
Okay.
that's a good question, but this is relatively new. So again, this is where we are. We're in our second year of an action plan. We've created some things. We're building it out across the system for implementation. And Taylor, I'll just show you real quick. So on our website, because I like to show people this. Right up here under programs and learning, right there, anti-equity, anti-racism, and anti-oppression. And everything that I talk about here today is available on our website.
Awesome.
So all things gender identity and gender expression,
Okay.
there's the resource bank. Anti-racism and anti-oppression. And this is where the results from our demographic data project will go. We have the results here from staff because that was the one we started with.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So just to show you the other one, that first one was race, religion, and culture, and this second one is on gender identity and expression. And again, everything from kinder all the way up to very specified senior. There's an example, gender inclusive activities in math for senior teachers in secondary, gender inclusive biology. It's just a place to start. It's not like an approved, it's not what everyone needs to teach. It's just when we're saying, listen, we have to do everything now from an anti-racism and anti-oppression lens. That's where teachers are able to start. And I told most of the group, Taylor, here this morning that I'm on a bit of a road show lately, going around to staff meetings. But those are some of the ones teachers want to talk about the most, right? What's a good one that I could do in grade 2? Oh, we're supposed to do holidays. A teacher told me today, grade 2 teacher, we're supposed to do holidays around the world in the grade 2 curriculum. Where can I start? Well, here you go. Here's a place to start. As well, and this is a continuation from last year, equity, anti-racism, and anti-oppression practices are embedded already into our inspired learning document. And this year we have what I would call a renewed focus across the district on universal design for learning and culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, as well as our first ever, those started last year, our CDSV Pride events.
Sorry, Amy, just back, just the acronym, the UDL and CRP.
Universal design for learning and culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. Those are frameworks for teachers to use that embed anti-racism and anti-oppression into them. And so universal design for learning, for example, is something our special services department has been focusing on for quite a few years. It means that when you're designing a lesson or a unit, you're thinking of all of those marginalized groups and you're intentionally taking away the barriers, right? So we have, we might have visual schedules as well as written instructions. We might have, closed caption for the hearing impaired on all of our videos. Those are things that teachers need to take into consideration for planning to center the voices of the groups who have been marginalized historically. Does that make sense? Yeah. And last but not least, organizational culture change. So this is basically, this is huge, right? How is our organization going to change in the next few years? How are we going to become an organization that embodies and embraces equity, anti-racism, and anti-oppression? And remember this morning, we were talking about that anti part, intentionally working against systems of oppression, intentionally working against racism, not just saying, I'm nice to everybody, right? And the best way for us to know if we're making progress is going to be when we ask the people that we serve, which are our students and their families, okay? So in the past year, we have made some progress with some student advisory groups. And they are all, some of them are formal, but some of them are ad hoc, and it's because they're based on relationships, right? They're based on relationships, not just saying, to the one Black student in a classroom, what do you think we should do about this? Some students don't like that, right? They don't want to be centered out and tokenized about Black History Month, for example. But if you have a relationship with that student, they might tell you on an ongoing basis how they would like us to center Black voices in their classroom experience. We have our first ever Muslim Student Association at our prior district high school. I'll show you a picture of them later. Our gender sexuality alliances now are in many of our schools, and after the December 15th and 16th leadership days, I imagine will be even more. The Indigenous Education Department is starting bringing back the Indigenous Student Forum, and those are ongoing. And we will begin purposeful and intentional family and community outreach in the new year. And what that means is we will be asking parents of, or parents who are Black, Indigenous, racialized, or marginalized, how we're doing and how we can get better. And that sounds like an easy thing to do, but in some cases it's not, because they don't trust us, right? And that's where we have to go back to the relationship piece, right? It's very important where those meetings are going to take place, where the consultation are going to take place, how we listen to them, if we believe them, and if we do anything when we ask them, how can we get better, right? They don't want a big fancy board meeting, I can tell you that, because I have built some relationships with family members and community members over the past 2 years. And they, in some cases, are building a trusting relationship with me. In some cases, are building a trusting relationship with their school. Some cases, they're not. They're like, you want to hear from us? What are you going to do about it? Right? My kid's in grade 11. He's almost through. He's been racialized the whole time. Why do you want to hear from me now? That's what some of the parents and community members say to us. Right? But I did want to show you a few pictures. So there on the left is our first Muslim Student Association. Wonderful, fabulous young women who pray in their first organized and dedicated and titled prayer room at Arm Prayer District High School. They pray in Urdu, Arabic, and English several times a day. And they're just wonderful, wonderful young student leaders. Of course, our dancers and drummers, that one in the middle is at Valor. That was earlier in the school year with the celebration for the opening at Valor, you know, the mural. Thank you, mural, that's it, yeah. And then the one on the left, that's in an elementary school, and also Muslim students teaching their class about Islamic Heritage Month. And I have a bunch of other pictures of them too, you know, learning how to use the PA system from the office staff, and teaching for 2 days a week for the entire month of October, which is Islamic Heritage Month, about their cultures and traditions. Some pictures from Pride, the first Renfrew County District School Board Pride event, which, as I mentioned this morning, took place in June of this year. So top left is the secondary Pride Forum. Bottom left is the elementary Pride Forum. You know, the cute little student, you know, with their very urgent question for Derek Nyber. He is born Pembroke person who came back as our guest speaker. And the kids really enjoyed that and asked us for more. This was the first ever rainbow dance. Every secondary school bussed students to RCI, as I told this morning, to attend the dance. And on the left, our police put on their Pride badges, and on the right, the RCI custodial team had on their Pride swag as well that day. And I couldn't help but show you this, because I got to tell you, I don't know if you could relate to this, but principals don't always love having to supervise at dances. Sometimes we're tired when we have to supervise at dances. But we had administrative support from every single secondary school there. There were about 300 kids there. And every single one of them said, I would do a Pride dance any day. Any day. This is the best dance I have ever had. A vice principal, tired vice principal, asking me already, when's the next Pride dance? That was great. It was so much fun. And I had to share this little quick video with you about the excitement of the kids. I'm telling you, some of the principals we had the principal in tears. She said she had never seen one of those students having fun at school ever. They've been at the school for 4 years, right? And they had a blast that day. So that was great. Started with the 4 pillars and I'm ending with what I'm now calling the 4 contrasts. This is something I've been learning to sit with lately. So in this work, I've found that these 4 contrasts come up again and again and again. And some of them we talked about this morning. One of them is time versus urgency. So a lot of us feel like we need a lot of time to do some of this learning. And that is contrasted against the urgency with which the marginalized students need us to do it. Okay. The other one is looking inward and expanding outward, right? So yes, we have to know who we are, our positionality in the world, our power, our privilege in the spaces and places that we hold it, but we also have to do a better job of consulting outside of our organization in order to center those marginalized voices that continue to be marginalized in a school board across the province. Visibility and invisibility, what parts of our students and our staff and each other do we see? What parts do we assume we see based on an internal bias? As I said this morning, maybe based on something as simple as what we come to school wearing, right? Versus what can't we see and what don't we see? And then what do we start to think isn't there because we're not looking for it, right? Because we're not looking for it. I've had people tell me many times over the past 2 years, we're a very white board. We're a very homogenous board. There's no diversity here. I cannot wait to come back and show you the demographic data survey because it is not going to tell that story. It is not going to tell that story. We are very diverse. Some of it is invisible. And some of it we have acted organizationally in a way that we wish to keep invisible. So there's a contrast there. And the last one is oppression versus excellence and joy. And I know, the title is called Anti-Oppression, and we talk about systems of oppression. And some of that is sad and heavy and, hard for us to digest. But when you start building the relationships and learning the stories and expanding your understanding of the diversity in the world, and indeed here in Renfrew County, you will see the excellence and joy and the ways that we can become a better organization by bringing some of those marginalized voices into the center, making our decisions based on the joyousness of the 2S LGBTQ community, rather than just trying to add them on at the end, for example, right? So those are my 4 contrasts. Took me a while to come up with those. And any questions or comments?
Any questions or comments for Amy?
I just have one quick question. You mentioned the equity audit.
Yes.
What will that encompass? What is that going to look like?
So I think the first step now, Ronaldo might have to help me remember, is going to be a broad picture look at our policies, our governance policies, so the governance structure, and then a specific look and audit and sort of assessment around, in particular, employee services, right? How do we treat our people in this organization? And those are happening across the province.
Right.
We're just right now talking to potential people who are doing that around the province.
I think Tana Turner actually did.
He
that
does.
For the Ontario Public School Board Association.
Yes, she does.
2 years ago or so.
We have an offer. We have her proposal of services
Amazing.
for our board.
So, okay, great.
That's the one that's in front of us right now.
Excellent. Thank you.
It's a great point through you, Mr. Chair, what Amy's talking about. Some of the greatest systemic barriers exist in our policies and procedures. What we rely upon to make decisions feed that cycle of anti-racism and anti-oppression that we need to tackle as an organization.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. Early October, I had the luxury of being able to spend some time in Amman, Jordan, a city of about 4 million people. And it was just interesting, the sort of reverse cultural shock for me. And upon arriving there, my son and his wife sort of educated me on some of the very obvious do's and don'ts from the, pardon the expression, ignorant person from North America coming to the country, and they hadn't been there that long. So I just, it was an interesting feeling. Hard to put into words, but just, you're in a country, and it's just not culturally not the same. So I can really understand and empathize for people that come to North America more now, because I've actually lived it. It was just really heightened my awareness. Anyway, more of a comment. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, thanks for listening to my voice all day long. It's way too much Amy in one day.
I have to tell you that you're very welcome. Please come back soon.
I will.
We're beyond that initial phase of, a couple of years ago, where we sit here and this is not my world, what's she talking about? Actually, we're starting to really engage with you. So thank you very much for everything.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. I gave a trustees homework this morning. Susan's is late, but I'm still gonna mark it.
Formal for
Okay,
me.
ladies and gentlemen, we just had the one item on the agenda, so could I have a motion for adjournment and seconder? Okay, Leo and Mike, all those in favor? Carry, we are now adjourned. Back to minute.
Thank you, trustee Morris, for taking that on. Thankfully, it wasn't a huge job, but it was a very educational one. Before I turn it over to what are we doing next? Program and student achievement. Before I turn it over to trustee Gannett, I just wanted to say a couple of quick things about the public education symposium. I know I had sent out just a reminder about that. It's well worth attending if you can at all. And I know, Dave, you probably don't have the information on it yet. But it is at the end of January, and it starts on the 26th to the 28th of January in Toronto at the Sheraton Centre. If you're going, you probably should book your room first and get that done, and then you can register. I know that we're trying to look into if there's any other way we can pay for the symposium other than having you pay for it yourself and submit an expense account, but at this point, it doesn't look like we can. So you can either put it on your credit card or electronic transfer, and then you would submit your expense accounts in after the event. But your expenses, of course, will be paid. And I think, as I mentioned, check policy 9 for some of those details. But it's a really excellent symposium. We have some really amazing. One of the keynote speakers actually is Chief Cadmus Delorme, whom I'm told is an excellent speaker. And I did see a brief clip from him. I just can't remember when it was, but not too long ago, and he was very good. And lots of workshops and things. You have choices of workshops to select, and many of them are dedicated to new trustees, because we have about a 50% turnover of trustees in the province this year in the 31 boards that OPSPA represents anyway. So I encourage you to go if you can, and just if there's any questions or concerns or whatever, let me know, and I can maybe help you walk you through that. But hopefully many of you can attend. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to trustee Gannett to carry on with our program and student achievement agenda.
Thank you. Yeah, we have 4 items on the agenda today, and just wanted to first mention are there any amendments that anybody can see to the agenda? None noted. I move to approve the agenda. Leo's a seconder. Leo, and do I have a seconder? David. Thank you. Are there any conflicts of interest? None noted. First on the agenda is an excursion request, and I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent Jenny Smith, who's going to give an overview on the trip to Germany.
So for those who may not have been through this process before, AP 260, which outlines our excursion request policy, has some, checks in place for along the way when people are planning excursions. And one of the things is that if someone is thinking about an international excursion, then it gets brought forward for approval in principle at least 10 months prior to the trip taking place. So that's what we're bringing forth today is consideration for approval in principle for an excursion that's being considered by Fellows District High School. So I'll give you just a bit of an outline and speak to some of the points that I've actually even changed since the package that you have received. I have some updated paperwork already. But essentially they are looking at trying to organize an excursion to Germany, Poland, Slovakia, and Budapest. The lead teacher organizing is Caroline Doran. They are looking at March 2023. So the excursion would begin just before March break and extend over the March break. They are using a company called EF Tours, which has been a company that our district has worked with in the past for international excursions, who has all of the liability insurance and the cancellation policies that we tend to look for when we are, entering into these agreements. So the excursion they're looking at would be 9 days total. Obviously, there would be airplane transportation. I'm not sure how else they would get there. It would be a pretty long journey if they did not fly, but it would be airplane and bus that they would be using as part of their excursion. They have found that they can run the excursion with as few as 12 students signed up, but they are hoping for more. They're hoping for at least 30. They're just not sure right now in this current climate where that will look like for them, but they're hoping to have a good amount of interest. The cost per student is just over $4,000. At this point, they have I'd say a modest goal of fundraising of $200 per student. But again, it's just not sure what they will be able to engage in at this time. They're hoping that they can increase that with a fundraising plan to begin next school year, should they have the students interested, and we provide approval for them to go ahead and pursue exploring this excursion further. So they do have, you'll note on the forms that they have supervisors listed, but those, could change, but they have multiple staff members interested in supervising the trip and will ensure they have the requirements met and meeting the ratio of 6:1 for adults to students. There are some details there on where they will go, mostly walking tours, historical sites, some really good opportunities for students to connect to the geography and history curriculum of their school. You'll note on the package, there was a mention of Budapest baths. The students will not be partaking in the Budapest baths part of the excursion. That was an optional add-on, and due to the water restrictions, they will not be participating in that. They're not going to be paying for that additional piece. And they have confirmed that there are no other activities that would require additional, safety precautions from our perspective for our liability purposes. So I'm not sure if anyone has any other questions, but essentially at this time, what the school is looking for is approval in principle to explore further, to go out to their community, to see what the interest is from their students and their families. They know that the price per student it's high. It's not a economical March break excursion, but they are looking at this as a really great opportunity to provide. So the school is looking for your approval in principle to go further in exploring this opportunity.
I just see Jody has a question online there.
And I may not have all the answers, but I could always go back to them to ask if we don't have them.
Thank you. I do have two questions. The first one that I note is, tells me to lower my hand, sorry. The first question that I have is, I think that this is an amazing opportunity. Having been many of these places myself, I think it's a great educational opportunity. My concern is about inclusivity. Are there any programs or opportunities for students who don't have the privilege of having $5,000 disposable dollars or $4,000 to access this trip, or is it only for those who can afford to pay for it?
It's a really good question, and something that's, comes up as a very common conversation when these things come up. The company, Jody, does provide, and I don't know the details of how many. I think that Caroline said 1 to 2 scholarships to fund 1 to 2 other students partaking in the excursion. How they would decide who gets those scholarships, I'm not sure. We'd have to think a little bit more about. I'm not sure in the past has Student Support Fund has not supported excursions. Are they? Yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair. A couple of things, Trustee Primo, great question. Student Support Fund has been utilized to support some excursions of students, not particularly international education excursions per se, because we were fairly fledgling in getting that started in around 2018, 2019, when the pandemic occurred. But the ultimate aspiration for our organization, once we get back to our international education initiatives, and we're working on that now, because fee-paying students bring in funds, the idea will be to create a bit of a portfolio that then allows us to reduce the costs per student, or maybe we differentiate it based on need, as a solution to helping offset costs for students who may not be quite as privileged as others. So it's a work in progress for us. The goal here is to reinvest those international education dollars as we get back up and running post-pandemic, right back into international education opportunities. And this is a great example of a tension that we have to manage as staff and as a board, because I feel the same way when I look at the dollars of those trips. And yet I've had a number of students say to me, I'm saving up, it's going to cut down my costs, and this may be the only time I ever get to do this at this kind of a price. So there's always that dynamic, but our goal here is to do it. And my final comment, one of the things when we are back up and running with a more fulsome international education component and those fee-paying students that we bring in, is to do some kind of a +1 model, where for parents and guardians, they might pay what's called a 4+1. If the cost of the trip is $800, we may put out to parents, if you pay $1,000, $200 will go to another student who can't. It's incredible how many people in our communities who hear that say, here's $1,200, not the $1,000 or the $800 I could have paid. Here's more. So we can set up some models to help exactly what Trustee Primo talking about, and we're getting back up and running. So glad to see these back on the radar, but it is a work in progress, and it's never perfect. I also understand a number of students don't come forward whatsoever because they just see this way beyond their reach. So we gotta work at this on multiple angles.
But your comment around it being an accessible way that they may not have otherwise is valid, because they, spoke to when they would add up the individual costs of flights and accommodations and meals and all these pieces that someone would have to have on their own to be able to do it outside of this opportunity, it would far exceed the student fee of this trip. So there is that piece as well.
I suppose just following up on this fund, is there any reason why the +1 model couldn't be implemented here? I understand the accessibility piece from the families who are middle income, and it might not be great accessible to them right now, but at least the students that I've encountered through the community, through my work with the community, and through my private business, it's always these students who never get this kind of opportunity, and it would be nice to see the fees reflect at least one scholarship opportunity. I recognize I'm just one voice, but it's something that I do feel strongly about, not to limit the ability to go on the trip, but to expand.
And staff can definitely explore.
Yeah.
It's a valid point.
And sorry, I did have one second question. I saw that Auschwitz is on this request, and specifically the Birkenau concentration camp. Having been there before, that's a very intense trip. It's a very important one in my personal view. But I was wondering if there's going to be any counseling before or after for the students on this part.
That's an excellent question, and definitely something I would follow up with the school about. That hadn't crossed my mind, so that's a really, really good point. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jody, for your questions. Are there any more questions or comments? I just have one. It's more of a comment, and that is regarding this trip, and having traveled quite a bit recently, and my wife traveled quite a bit recently. She on a trip in coming back in July, I believe she caught COVID in the airport or on a plane coming back. Same thing happened to me on my last trip. I came back November 2nd, I believe. And I believe I caught COVID then. So just a recommendation that it be passed on through me, that when they go on this trip, particularly in the airplane or at the airports, I would recommend that they be wearing a mask. I think that's just you don't go looking for it, but it happens. And it's happened to myself and my wife. So I think that's just good, in good judgment. So
we're looking to March 2023, so we're keeping our eyes to what's happening, leading up to that time, and they have the ability to, I can't remember the exact timelines, but they get pretty close before they can cancel. Right, it should things change globally and,
Yes,
Just adding on to what Jody was saying, for students who may not be comfortable going to Auschwitz, do you think there would be an alternative for them maybe? Or
Oh.
something that definitely should be discussed before maybe? Because I know for some students, that could be a lot.
yeah, that's a really good point. I will see, because sometimes they have alternate activities that they
Yeah.
could do or choices,
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like the
Yeah.
comfort level, just, they're spending all this money. We definitely want to ensure that they're going to be comfortable during this trip.
And I think that's part of when they have, prior to anything like this, they have meetings with students and parents and they explain, what the plan is and what all the different things are. So people are really informed of what they are,
Yeah.
what they're getting involved in and agreeing to. So, but following up around alternate plans, for those not comfortable is a great idea.
Awesome.
any other questions, comments? None noted. I just noticed in my notes here that funny, yeah, it just disappeared on me. Hold on. Oh, and you want to get something technologically, eh?
You're just looking for the motion?
Oh, yeah, I'm looking for it. I had it. I just had it.
Oh,
Oh,
just before we do the motion,
Sure.
is there an ability to hear the answers to these questions before we vote? Like, would we be able to return to this at our next meeting, or is that too late?
Well, at this point, we're really seeking approval in principle to further explore. We could bring it back for final approval around the excursion. But that would mean that at this point, if we give that approval in principle, that they would be starting to reach out to students and families though. So there is that piece.
Certainly, I for myself, I would definitely like to hear a little bit more around the fundraising and scholarship piece, and I'm interested. The fundraising scholarship piece would impact my vote, but the counseling piece, I'm also interested in.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we could follow up on the excellent questions in return. Staff can bring that back to the board for the 20th of December, which won't.
That's not too long away. December 20th.
All day break.
Yeah. Yeah, we're meeting, what, 3 weeks? 2 weeks? 2 weeks, December 20th? Yeah. That sounds like a very reasonable request, Jody.
Thank you.
So you don't need your motion.
I don't need my motion, but it disappeared on me. I had it. Hey, okay. So we'll postpone that until the 20th. Is there any new business regarding this committee? Unseen? Make a motion for adjournment? Ready, sorry.
We have 3 more agenda items.
Oh, sorry. No, I was trying to break them up, but no, I got it.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay, my apologies. Okay, the second item we have up is, it's a follow-up related to the exploration of STEM focused SHSM report, and it's Kristen Rydell. That's what Kristen Rydell is going to discuss. She moved over there.
I'm just going to see if Peter Burnett and Pat Braza were here.
Yeah, that's right here.
Okay.
Are they joining virtually?
No, they said they were coming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, can we shift items and I'll just,
It might be just downstairs. I'm gonna guess it.
they knew 4. So.
Switch item.
Yeah, and I can go, the third one's fairly quick and that way.
Yeah, we can go right, sure. We can go right to the third one. For now. Okay, the third item is an overview of elementary school, the review of it. And I will give Director Buffoni permission to speak. And just prior to that, just basically just want to read the purpose of it, to provide the Board of Trustees with an overview of the first phase of the vision exercise regarding programs and or services offered by the district at the elementary level, implemented as a multi-year expansion of programs and services in the fall of 2018. The overview is intended to serve as valuable context for the collective work currently taking place as part of the second phase of the vision exercise at the secondary level. I'll turn it over to you, Director Buffoni.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I think Trustee Gannett has absolutely described the purpose. Wanted to provide this report more as context for reports coming in the next month and a half to the Board of Trustees. In the fall of 2017, a visioning exercise committee was established to look at the nature and scope of the programs and services offered across the district, both elementary and secondary levels. And this has included really pathways in both of our official languages as a country in English and French. There are 3 attachments that I just wanted to bring the Board of Trustees' attention, again, just as context, because all of this work has taken place. This is strictly for information. The first is a guiding principles document, first attachment in the report, that really speaks to principles that we've utilized to guide decision-making at a systemic level. The second you'll see is a terms of reference for the visioning exercise committee we established over 5 years ago. And you'll see in attachment B that we had dates and times established with an elementary focus and a secondary focus. And part of what I want to speak to today is that it became apparent at the preliminary meetings of the committee that the conversations happening at the elementary level were significantly different from those at the secondary, although they were related, that we needed to establish 2 subgroups. And so what you have in front of you is really the work of the first phase of the visioning exercise. What you'll begin to receive on December 20th and then on January 10th and the 24th is the work of the second phase. First phase being an elementary and the second phase being, of course, for our secondary school review that you're well aware we're involved in right now. You know, one of the things that was a key driver for the work at the elementary level was market share. And this remains the case for our organization. The ability to sensibly size our organization to ensure that we're managing not only our people, but our places in a manner that sets up the future of the organization to be well positioned. And we're making decisions, even difficult decisions in the now, that ensure the future is always positioned properly and positioned responsibly as an organization. Over the course of the 2017-2018 school year, the framework for a multi-year expansion of programs and services was created, including the following key elements. The first was a school-by-school analysis of programs and services offered over a 10-year period. So the third attachment's really a 20-page document that laid out for our public what we intended to offer consistently system-wide for the next 10 years. And that's the bulk of that document. About the first 12 pages focus on that. Around pages 13 and 14 are a 2-page document, which is a guideline for the weekly distribution of instructional time at the elementary level. So within that document, we have a multicolored page that really lays out what we're teaching, for how long, and in which language. And what's actually equally important to that page is the page behind it that says, as an instructor, use your professional judgment to combine curricular elements, to weave together aspects of science and math, or it might be arts and language, in a manner that you feel is right for the clientele, for the students that you have in front of you. But this does establish consistency in programming so that what's happening in our schools isn't a lottery. Isn't that French is taught one way in one school, but differently in another school. That students who were learning science and English at one school and happen to move to another part of the county aren't learning it in French in another school. This established consistency from kindergarten through to grade 8, and you'll see in 2 weeks' time conceptualizations that speak to how we're bringing that continuing to bring that forward into grades 9 to 12. And then the last part that I'll share that was important to note is a sense of, or a series of frequently asked questions for parents and guardians, especially for children not yet in the system, at the last 5 or 6 pages of that multi-page document. It just asked, what programs are offered? Where are they? What if I'd like to enroll my child in early French immersion, but it's not in my home school? All of those kinds of things that we established across the 20-page document. And we intend to produce a similar resource, although it'll be different in content, but a similar resource at the secondary level for a number of reasons. One is clarity of our messaging as leadership of the organization. The other one's public confidence, the ability to put together a document that visions out the future, speaks to our commitment to ensuring it happens, and not to a question mark tied to a series of factors that really are within our control if we have good decision-making processes. I do want to share that since the release of the multi-year expansion of programs and services, there are 3 parts that we followed it by and large to a T. Everything that we put in the document has played out. We've simply adjusted a couple of things, and I'll explain what they are. The first one is that there were 2 families of schools where we put a TBD, a to be determined, and that was the Deep River and the Madawaska Valley family of schools, where we weren't certain at the time of release of the document whether we would have an early French immersion or a middle French immersion in those families of schools, and we confirmed both the middle French immersion in the fall of 2021 for the Deep River family of schools and the middle French immersion for the for the Madawaska Valley family of schools at Sherwood Public School in the fall of 2022. So we've taken out the to be determined and really locked in what we intended to do after those community consultations. The second one we never thought we would probably do in a million years, but we did it, was for the 2020-2021 school year, program options in English and early French immersion at an elementary virtual school that was established tied to remote synchronous learning as a result of the pandemic context. And so there's an addendum on the 20th page that speaks to that, and we had never envisioned a pandemic in the fall of 2018 when it was released. The third one is that it's important to highlight the only adjustment to take place in other areas, the ones that weren't to be determined and something we didn't know about the pandemic, was a shift of the intermediate students in grades 7 and 8 from Herman Street Public School to Valor JK-12 School for the 2021-2022 school year as a result of enrollment pressures in the Petawawa family schools. So those are the 3 adjustments to the document since the time of its release. And again, wanted to share that with the Board of Trustees as a bit of contextualization at the elementary level for the upcoming secondary phase of these discussions at the next board meeting, committee of the whole, or committees meeting, and then again at board meeting in January. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Director Buffoni. I'd like to move on to the next item. We'll go back up to number 2, a follow-up related to the exploration of STEM-focused SHSM, a report from SO Kristen Rydell. And just wanted to make a moment in reading it. There was a couple of things that just popped out to me, and I keep coming back to including certifications recognized by the ministry and industry partners. And then an example, the paragraph below that, include ministry recognized certifications. That really jumps out at me when I read the report. So I'll turn it over to you. And
thank you, Trustee Gannett. And I am going to turn it over to my fellow colleagues, Peter Burnett, who is System Principal of Experiential Learning and looks after co-op, OYAP, and SHSM, and then Pat Brazeau, who has an instructional coach and oversees SHSM. I attended the SHSM Day that was held at the community center in Cobden, and there's a picture of it there. It was a really wonderful day. There were hundreds of kids there. The engagement for the day was, I don't think they deviated from any of the learning that they were doing, and there were certainly lots of opportunities for for students to learn, to engage and share. But I will turn it over to you two gentlemen.
Thank you very much. And I'm gonna probably talk first for a little bit, and then I'm gonna give the floor to Pat. And so Pat is our SHSM coordinator, and we're super lucky to have him because the energy he brings and the knowledge he brings to how these programs work, we really all benefit from. So you're gonna get the opportunity to hear him in a minute. And I'll just, Trustee Gannett talked about the words that jumped out at him, and when we met as a small group here to think about that motion, and we were going through it, and we were talking about ministry recognized and certifications that, you know, that were in the industry too. We kind of looked at each other and thought, that's SHSM too, in many ways. So we were looking at that motion, and we'll get to it here in a couple of seconds. We thought, we do a lot of this already, and maybe there's some way for us to look at what we're doing and maybe have this filter or this lens that's exactly going to do all of these things for us in a way that engages kids in a really awesome, authentic learning and prepares them for STEM-related careers. And so we're really thrilled to share what we have because we think we've got it. So Pat, let's go ahead. And so Trustee Gannett referenced this motion that was put in place back in the fall. And I don't know if I need to reread that, but essentially, you kind of got the notion of what that was. Well, some of you were part of that motion, actually putting that together, but asking us to think about how we could put together a ministry recognized program that had this STEM related focus. And we wanted to make sure that the community-based values were there, that the inspired partnerships were going to be in place, that certifications were recognized in industry, and that the Ministry of Education would say to us, yeah, this is sort of in line with all of our visioning for what boards are doing. And so we decided that we would take a look at where we were doing this really, really well in our board already and see how we had to adjust things slightly to make it fully in line with this motion that was put in place with our board of trustees back in the fall. So Pat, let's go ahead to the next part of this. So we started this investigation where we kind of said to ourselves, okay, we think we know what the trustees are asking us to look at. Let's start at one of our SHSMs or a couple of them and see if we can make it look and feel and operate exactly like we're being asked to do. And so we engaged Pat in some conversation. We said, Pat, so, you know, we know that inherent in a lot of our SHSMs, there's connections to science, there's connections to math, there's connections to technology for sure. Is it obvious? Is it explicit? Are the certifications that are there industry recognized? And Pat said, in a lot of places, yeah. But let's dive right in and see if we can have a really good fit. So Pat, first of all, added this definition for us about what a STEM job might be. And so, you know, a STEM job in the field of science, technology, engineering, or math. And I won't read the slide to you, but the essence of this is really just, we want to make sure that we're preparing our students for the world that they're jumping into, right? When they leave our buildings. And we know that the program that we're going to be talking about here today will do that. We'll launch them into a place where they can leave high school ready for post-secondary in whatever pathway they're going to head to. And that's really important. We wanted to make sure that we weren't designing something just for our workplace kids, just for our college kids, just for our university kids, for example. We wanted to make sure that whatever program we put in place was going to give them the skills that they needed, STEM related, to be successful. And I think we've done that. So Pat, let's go ahead. So as we continue our investigation, we want to talk about what are some of those skills. And so you can see them up here. And again, it's quite a list, but you'll see built into our strategic plan, built into our inspired learning framework document, a lot of these same things are there. We want our kids to be critical thinkers in STEM related fields. We want them to be able to conduct analysis. We want them to be detailed, right? We want them to be problem solvers, critical thinkers. We want them to communicate effectively. We want them to be able to collaborate. So you see our global competencies built into there. You see the other skill sets that we know are going to be really important as our kids, in whatever pathway, whatever career choice they make, move on. And we know that in STEM, we can help them get to those areas. Let's go, Pat.
Yeah, so now that's me.
Well, okay, so I just then advanced the slide. We worked on it. We really didn't prep who was gonna do too much about what.
That's on our toes.
Well, listen, we were mindful that we were just late enough coming up here that Pino had to jump ahead in the agenda. And maybe we're now standing between all of you
For
leaving
2 minutes
and,
early though. Sorry.
okay. Oh, so that's good then. Built into our SHSM programs and sort of inherent in the motion, I think we were asked to look at and dig into is the importance of our community partnerships. And as a district, we do this really well. We do this really, really well. So much so that we have some of our partners reaching out to us to sort of say, how can we help? How can we be involved? And we know the pandemic slowed a lot down. It sure did. But we're at a place now where we've got our employers who are reaching out to us saying, hey, do you have any co-op students? We could take some. Any creative program you want to do, we could maybe help out. And we've done that for a long time in Renfrew County. And you've heard me present about those things in the past. But with respect to our program that Pat's going to talk about in more detail, our community partners help us. If you want to know what an SHSM program is, it's really all of this. It's all sort of 5 of those bullets. That kind of encompasses what our SHSMs are. The SPE, the sector partner experience, our employers help us with that. Our community partners help us with those. And they can look very different depending on what program we're talking about. Reach ahead activities, career exploration, co-op, of course, and certification. So Pat, in all of his work supporting our SHSMs, builds these bridges and these connections with our employers, who in turn help our students sort of get all of these experiences, all of these skills. And down here, we've just got a couple of examples, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. But for the purpose of the STEM-related SHSM that we're going to talk about, these might be 2 big ones. So CNL, it has been one of our community partners for a long time. And they've been really important to us. They've helped us in so many ways. And we've reached back out to them and say, hey, let's sit down and chat a bit more because we've got some ideas coming. And we know that they're keen to help. We haven't had a chance to flush that out yet. Canadian Forces reached back out to us and they continually do. And so we have a lot of interest in that, and it could be beyond just the traditional military co-op. But those are 2 examples where we see science and technology and engineering and math heavily rooted in what they do with their organizations. And if they're willing to be partners in the learning that we have for our students, then we're that much better off. So we've got great community partners. It's an important part of the motion put forward. It's a critical part of what SHSMs do and how they operate. And we're excited because we've got and if our programs go beyond that, they certainly can, right? Because our students that are part of SHSMs have co-op placements, sector-related and specific co-op placements, and they won't all be in just 1 or 2 organizations. They might be in a number of places. But just know that that's an important part, and they're there, and we've got some great partners there. So, Pat, go ahead and advance it, and I think maybe you might be on the next slide.
Yeah, I think I am on the next one.
Okay.
So after looking at, labor markets in the area to make sure that our students that go through this program actually have a place to work once they're done. After looking at careers that are in the STEM, all the soft skills needed, all of the stuff that Peter just went through, we focused on this one. This is the one we think that we should pilot, is the Information and Communication Technology SHSM program that is already existing at Valor. And we're just going to tweak it and spin it into a STEM-focused program. That's going to cover all of the skills needed and really dive right into what STEM is and get them ready for a career in STEM. So I'm going to go a little bit over how we're going to do this. We can't change SHSM programming, but we can focus it. We can choose our activities that we do. We can tell, our employers, talk about your STEM activities, talk about the STEM that you do, talk about the critical thinking that you do when you're talking to our students, dive into stuff like that. Okay, so we can do something like that. So I'm going to go a little bit about how SHSM works, the stuff that they do need to do, and how we can tie it in to be a STEM related program. So first thing that they have to do is they do have to take their courses. Okay, that's not a change. The Information Communication Technology program that we chose They can take all of these. They can take their tech courses. They can take physics, right, which is the science, which helps with electronics and all that stuff. Tech design, computer tech. These are all courses that are already running at Valor that fits the STEM model. The co-op that they need to choose, that's where community partners really dive in. That's where they come in and they make this program shine. Okay, we're going to choose those partners. We're going to choose those placements for the co-op students in a STEM related, very focused STEM related career. Okay, and I have a list of possible careers at the end just so you can look at, just to give you an idea. This is where we dove in and this is where we chose. Based off of the careers that exist, this is the program that we need to go to, I think. Okay, next one. Okay, the certifications, that list that Peter showed you, the SPE, experiential learning, career exploration, all that stuff. I kind of lump that, a lot of those into what they call certifications in the SHSM world. Okay, I don't like that word. To me, it's a skills acquisition type of activity that the students do. The skills that they learned are industry specific. And they do it with industry partners. Okay, so the SPE, the sector partnered experience, that one there, we don't have to change anything. It's 100% STEM because they have to focus on one of three things: a challenge that they have to come up with a solution, how coding is used in the industry, or math. Okay, three things that fit right into the STEM model. So again, right here, the skills that they're going to learn built in. We were just there on Friday, they had a blast, did some recording, learned how to wire a whole system, how to set up mics. It was really neat. I just wanted to throw that one in there. It was fun. Okay, so next one. And then there's the career exploration and the reach ahead. So career exploration, what we're going to do is we're going to expose them to different careers, STEM related careers that are in the area. Okay, here are things that you can possibly do that are STEM related. Okay, again, heavily involved with our community partners. Let's bring them out there. Let's bring them to these workplaces. Imagine going to CNL and being exposed to all of the different careers that they can do in one site. Okay, that's one of our partners. The military, they reached out, actually Peter was saying that, they reached out to Valor and they said, we want to get this partnership up and going again. The pandemic was a little tough. We're ready. Let's get something going. Again, they have so many things there to offer that would fit this program perfectly. And it's minutes away from the school, right? So then what we do is when we do that, the career exploration, the reach ahead, we just make sure that they're STEM focused. Okay, so it's just a little bit of tweaking, just a little bit of focusing of what the SHSM at Valor already existing. We just have to tweak it slightly to make sure that it focuses on STEM programming. You have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, so is this like a careers fair, or are these bringing students to all these different places?
The SHSM program?
Like just this career exploration in general? Like
Oh,
is this
There's
bringing-
many, yeah, good question. Actually, it looks different in every different area. There's many possibilities. One of them can be a career fair. We have done that. It can be, let's hop on a bus and visit a couple different places that are related to, in this case would be information communication technology. In other places we've done it, it's like, okay, let's check out, construction, manufacturing, et cetera. It could be, just having people come in. We did this a lot during the pandemic where we'd have one or two people come into virtually on the screen while the students are eating their lunch, talking about, like, oh, I'm a physiotherapist, this is what I do. The next day it's a chiropractor. It can look very different depending on where you're doing it, who's involved, what community partnership. But yeah, it's all of the above. How's that? Yeah, so basically that's the SHSM program, the components that are in it, and the ones that fit very perfectly into the STEM model.
That was it.
Back to Peter.
Did I? Okay. Yeah, we're there. So there really wasn't a whole lot. And to your point too, like, we know that as Pat talked about the bundled courses that are part of an SHSM. And so when we decide on those SHSMs and that pathway, there are those bundled courses, and Pat referenced them. And built into all of our curriculum documents, there's a component that talks about career pathways, right? And exploration about careers. And so we can make sure too that as part of those bundled courses, we're doing a little bit of work talking about STEM careers that are part of those courses. So we really just thought, in very short order here, we give you sort of a quick overview of how easily we think we can make sure that in this one program at Valor, we can tick every box of an SHSM program, maintain the integrity of what those SHSM programs are supposed to be, and help enhance our community partnerships. And again, as Pat mentioned too, they're reaching out to us. They want to be partners with us in all these things. And we can show our students how they're STEM-related jobs within those industries. The hands-on relevant experience, whether it's the reach ahead opportunities, the certifications, co-op placements, we're going to give our students opportunities to really learn what employees in our organizations after graduation are doing. And we're going to help them make or understand how what they're learning in their classrooms is how it can get used down the road. And those are always questions, right? Like, tell me where I'm going to need to know this skill. Tell me where I'm going to need to apply this learning. And we know that with our STEM-focused SHSM, we're going to answer those questions for our students in what we know to be a really important area. And this last bullet speaks to that. We've got the pieces in place to implement this at the will of the district. So, you know, all of the work, all of the legwork is really done. We chose a pilot project that we think was the closest or very close to being able to make sure that that motion was honored with the fullest of intentions and still maintain what we're supposed to be doing for our SHSM. Pat, who has to do all the reports to the ministry on how we're handling the ministry funding for SHSM programs, our completion rates, will be able to do those reports the same way that he always has. It's just with a few tweaks, we've got a focus here on STEM, and we think it's a really exciting opportunity. So I think that's it, unless there's questions from anybody, really.
I heard a bloop there.
I heard a bloop too.
I think I'm the bloop.
Hey.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the presentation. I think this is a wonderful program, but I do have a few questions that maybe we have answers for, or maybe this is something we could follow up with. With regard to the bundled courses, in order to qualify for this program, can students take courses that are, I'm not sure what the terminology is, but like university or college based or advanced? I don't know what the different streams are, but does it matter what stream they are?
It does not. So in order to get a program, I don't know where the camera is. Where am I looking to answer here?
It's over there, but she's looking at your presentation anyway. Okay.
I just want you to see, am I in the screen here?
No.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, good.
Good.
So in order to get a program into a school, you have to prove that you're able to offer courses in all pathways. So the ministry will not approve a program in that school unless you can actually prove it to them beforehand. So yeah, there's courses in all pathways, absolutely.
Thank you. The second question that I have is, I'm from Deep River here, and we have a very STEM focused school, which is fantastic. But one thing that we still notice is that there's lower enrollment with STEM programs for women as well as FNMI students and BIPOC students. Do we have any specific ways that you're thinking of ensuring that there's good representation by gender and by background and culture?
Well, this is funny. I just did another application for another school where I had to, sorry, camera. Where
I'm here.
we're just putting in an application for a new program at a different school, or actually at that same school. And that question comes up. They've added that into the programming. So what I answered there was the focus right now, what we've done is the board is doing a great job by instructing teachers, right? They're making them aware. They're giving them PD on everything. So then once the teachers are comfortable, then that will filter down to the students, right? So now when you're choosing partnerships, or when you're choosing co-ops, or when you're bringing presenters into your class, you have that in the back of your mind. You're making sure you're equitable. You're making sure that you're thinking of all these students and make sure that they can see themselves in these presenters when they're coming into these schools, right? Or if you're taking them out and stuff like that. So that's how I answered that question there, and I think it applies here as well, right? So it's starting with the teachers, giving them PD, getting them comfortable, because they're the ones who are making these connections. They're the ones who are bringing and setting up these presenters and these trips and stuff like that. And then that'll trickle down. I hope I answered the question properly.
I think so. I suppose the only follow-up I have to that is at the end of this pilot program, when you're reporting, will you be including those numbers of the total number of participants? How many of them are from the groups that I mentioned?
So the ministry doesn't, all they ask is male, female, and the S column. I don't remember what the title was again. Prefer not to specify, I believe is what it is. That's all they ask. They don't ask anything else about, FNMI or LGBTQ plus, all that stuff. They don't, it's not part of my report. They don't ask, sorry.
Okay.
But we could,
We could, yeah.
I guess that's the question, but we could. Could we not?
Question here. Do they get a certificate or a note on their transcript, or is there anything that follows up that gives them an added bonus when they go out?
Oh, absolutely. For completing an SHSM, absolutely. See what they're doing. It would be the exact same thing if we run this program here, the STEM focused one. When they graduate and they complete all the components, all the courses, all the training, they get a red seal, a red SHSM seal on their diploma. They get to walk across the stage with a nice red cord around their neck. And they get a record card that follows along with them that shows all of the stuff that they've done, all of the training, all of the certifications, all of that. Sorry, I missed one.
Something else.
I have one right here.
Oh, you did it.
We had a co-op with these.
Oh, right there you go. Awesome. Yeah, yes, that red cord is amazing.
Doing it for the core.
I used to give it out to students when I worked at Valor. I was the one in the back of the stage saying, "Here,
Yeah.
congratulations, it was great."
And can I jump in too, Jody, just on your question earlier too about the promotion of the pathways and activities. As a district, we're well aware of transitions, right? And the importance of making sure that our students from our younger grades, as they get older, they are aware of what lies ahead of them in terms of opportunities in our district. And we're very mindful of the fact that we, with our SHSM program, have something exciting to offer, right, across all grades. And so we I think can make sure that as part of our intentional offerings to our younger students, we can lay out that pathway and make sure that we help our young female students, for example, see skilled trades as a possible career choice, STEM focused careers as a possible career choice. And I think we need to make sure that we're mindful of the messaging that we're sending across all of our grades, quite frankly. And we don't want to wait till our students are in grade 11 when they're being signed up for an SHSM program to recognize that, regardless of how you identify, there's a STEM career that might be right for you. And so I think to kind of get at what you're saying, it's maybe a big job if what you're telling us is that traditionally underserved, in terms or like a lower proportion of our students are taking STEM if they're female, if they identify other than the normal binary way, then we need to be mindful of that and make sure that that's part of the work that we're doing, even in younger grades, so that all students can see themselves in all pathways and all careers. And I think we can make sure that we're doing that.
Any other questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Trustee Primo, it's a great question, something we have to have our eye on almost across all of our programs and services moving forward. One of the things that we'll send along to the trustees in the spring of 2022, we did an update report on specialist high skills major. It doesn't give some of what you've asked for, but it does give a sense of where the pathways broke down for specialist high skills major, how many students from certain programming academic applied at the time. Now we're de-streaming at the secondary level, but we'll give you the most recent report from the spring. I can't remember which month it is, but we'll find it. We'll send it along to all trustees, especially to the new trustees. Just give you a bit of context on the program, in addition to the good questions you've asked.
Thank you very much.
Leo, you're next.
Great, thanks. So did you get a response from CNL from your letter that you sent?
So not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Right. We're
And the other
being key.
So just to clarify, so currently it's an ICT Shazam at Valor, and you're going to switch it to a STEM?
Or added alongside it.
Oh,
We can't change the SHSM sectors that exist. So what we're doing is we're having it, the STEM kind of layer over it almost, so that we're making sure that the opportunities, the certifications are all STEM focused. The sector partner experiences have a STEM lens to them, and they very naturally fit that sector.
So when they complete it, do they have an ICT Shazam or?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can't change that.
They can't.
No.
Oh, yeah, I understand now.
Thank you, Leo. Susan, you're next.
Yeah, just a couple of things, maybe just for the newer trustees, just so that you know, the Shazams, and maybe you know this already, is the ministry funds those programs. So that's why we're taking our STEM idea and kind of putting it under that Shazam umbrella, because we know the funding will be there. Right, so just to kind of help put that into perspective. I guess I have two questions. I know you talked about CNL and the base perhaps. Have you looked or thought about other partners like Bubble Technology or Armcar Aerospace? Like those would be ones that I would automatically think of that would be ideal for this focus as well.
We did. We haven't reached out because Bubble Tech was one of them.
Okay.
And when I looked into clientele and stuff like that, it's going to be a harder door to walk into than probably CNL for, because they do a lot of security, like radiation security scanning and stuff like that. And, but I'm not saying I'm not going to try, but absolutely, that was one that's on my list. Armed Prior Aerospace for a Valor program might be a little far to get to. I'm not saying no. We've tried in the past to get in there. They won't let us in the door. I'll keep trying.
I guess the other piece around that then is why just Valor? Like,
That's where the program exists already.
but could we not do that program at another school as well? Or virtually connect it to another school? It would seem to me it would be logical. I know we're in a big geographic area, right?
Yeah.
But for example, with Valor and Mackenzie maybe because CNL is so close to Mackenzie, and they already have a STEM focus, it would seem logical to maybe have that as a connection. I just wondered about that.
So that's a great question. And this is very scalable, right? At the direction of the board, we think. Valor is the only one that has the ICT SHSM. So we're mindful of that. If we wanted to scale it across the district, we would need to look at where the fit and where the match is in the other sectors that exist in those other schools, if that makes sense. So right now, Valor is the only school that has an ICT SHSM, which is the one that we thought had was a really natural fit and did come with some close proximity to a couple of really strong community partners in the STEM area. That doesn't say, though, that there aren't other great fits. I know, I think about ETM and Renfrew, for example. I know you mentioned Armcar Aerospace, where there are lots of science, technology, engineering, and math skill sets that are required to be successful. And so I think our hope here is that with the rollout of this, we find a lot of success. And we find our students saying with their voice, this has been really impactful for me. And if that's the messaging that we're getting, you can almost be guaranteed that we'll be coming back with looking for permission to throw a lens, in other areas. So I think it's very doable, absolutely. But we wanted to start with one and see if we could, make it work and make it work really well, and then get that student feedback. Does that answer your question?
I guess I'm wondering, because I know and I understand why it's based at Valor, but could you even as part of your pilot, offer it at another school as well and do a virtual connect to the number? I mean, it wouldn't be a huge number of students.
Right. So we can't just without going through a whole process and application, create an SHSM in a school. We have to apply to do that to the ministry. Pat could talk about that process.
Yeah, it's lengthy.
So you can't link in a student from another school to your SHSM in Valor.
Not easily, but we're looking into that. So other schools I think have tried it, or not other schools, other boards. I've been talking to the ministry for exactly that reason, saying, is this possible? How is it done? Then it falls into Aspen issues. Where's the person residing? Where's the student in Aspen? Is a shared student? Because the program exists over here, but they're graduating over here. And I've been having those conversations because I know it was going to come up as soon as this becomes popular and successful. We need a plan. So I've already started those conversations.
And you think the ministry would be keen on this because, anyway,
Well,
you know all that.
So the ministry, they prefer these to be local because to approve or to apply for a program, you have to prove local labor market, that they have careers and opportunities where you're applying. So being a rural board, applying for a program at MV compared to Arnprior is very, very different. So, but we massage the ministry and we try to make it fit.
Catch up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Catch up to what our needs are. Sorry.
Next question goes to S.O. Poirier.
A couple of us, we just want to add on to that clarification, I think too, is just the recognition that you have to be able to demonstrate that the same courses could be offered at the other school. So although we believe we could offer, maybe some of the ICT stuff virtually, you'd have to be able to offer the tech component in person. And that again will depend on the population and the students at the school. I know like a couple of years ago, we were exploring more of being able to do between schools for the business sector because it doesn't have a tech course component the same. And the ministry was exploring that with us. And then we were in COVID times. And so we'll have to maybe, Pat's been doing a good job of asking for more support on that and how we could do it. But I just think that's the type of program that would lend itself more easily to it because you don't have to have the same in-school component necessarily. But yeah, there's lots of different factors that they make us, lenses that they look through in order for us to receive the funding. So that's why it's a little more challenging.
Pretty restricted, basically. Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you for that. Brian, you're next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The idea for this just didn't come from day before yesterday. We've been talking about this for quite a while. I know I've bugged the hell out of the director for about 3, 4, 5 years. And finally, we're getting somewhere. A couple of preliminary questions first. Now, for all the pathways, all 5 pathways, where's the predominant? It's not all even. Where's the predominant market in terms of our students for this kind of a program?
Right now,
Based on this exam.
this Shazam right now, I would say they were mostly college bound. Right now, but there's
What opportunities would there be for those who are university bound?
lots.
Okay.
Because right now the program exists as, like right now, it's not a STEM focused, right? It's a ComTech focus where they focus a lot on video production, graphics design, and that's the pathway, right? It's a college bound pathway. Once we add the STEM on top of this, it opens that door wide open.
Okay, so let's say a student wanted to, pursue pure sciences at a university. How could he or she or them utilize this particular program to advance their standing when they're applying for university?
Well, anybody that has a red seal on their diploma, it looks great. It shows that the students were
But in terms
serious.
of the courses that might help leading into their chosen field.
Right.
Well, I was just gonna say, so they'll, as Pat mentioned too, for us to have even been approved to get this, we had to demonstrate that we had the courses for all pathways.
Sure.
And so a university path student would still be able to take the courses at that school that they would want to take in the university pathway to open the door for their application to their required programs. What this does, the STEM focused SHSM, what that does, it also gives them opportunities to make connections with community partners, to get certifications that they might be able to then augment application packages to their programs. It actually only helps them in all pathways. So they'll still take their courses, their 4U courses, they'll apply to their university program the same way they would if they weren't part of it. But the fact that it's an opportunity for them, it opens the door for them to get these other bonus things that are part of our SHSM programs.
They're really good. And
Yeah.
when we were talking about this, we were looking at all the different pathways.
Mhm.
But some of the pathways are a little underserved compared to what we do for some of the other ones. Because some students are just seen as being, well, they'll actually just do fine anyways. But we've got to make the best opportunities for all of our students in all of the pathways. This works better for perhaps some than for others. It's almost like it's becoming a specialist high school major program as opposed to a pure STEM, program that leads to greater opportunities for all of our students. Nice to have the money, but this is not what the original concept was.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just
Yeah.
a point of a clarification. One, returning back to, I think, 19 sectors, 13, 19 STEM, 19 SHSM sectors. STEM isn't one of them. So an application under that front would have been very challenging to be approved for. I think what Pete and Pat are saying is the existing one has got a real focus right now in the ICT that we're looking to adapt and shift to a STEM focus, which will open up those opportunities not only for students in college pathway, but university. And that's what we're asking the Board of Trustees, is the opportunity to explore that adaptation of it, shape it in our own pathway, stay within the parameters of the SHSM criteria, including the funding. And that's important for long-term viability of the programs, that we ensure we're responsible in how we're paying for what we're doing. So that's the important piece to it. And what we're really looking for is the opportunity here to now begin that work of adapting that program with a STEM focus and lens to it. And I think to many of the questions that have come up so far, see how that pilot goes. Take a year and start that and see where we land, both in terms of the students we're attracting and the pathways they're going to. When I look at what's been presented, I think of a lot of opportunities across all the pathways, including those students who want to go on to become an engineer in a university-based program. That this to me has got a ton of potential, allows us to get that going, and is a responsible way to fund that over time, and ensure, and I'm being honest with what I'm going to say next, ensure the quality of what we're offering, that there's checks and balances to what we have in place here, and that we're not off and running, quite frankly, with an idea from a member of staff, from a teacher to a director, that isn't tied to some kind of a check and balance on quality of programming. So I think in essence, what we're really looking for is the ability to, what we're bringing forward is the notion of adapting what we've already got in place.
And that's the key
Shifted to
there,
that.
how you adapt it so that not just the bulk of students in the middle state and college level students are the ones who are benefiting most from this particular program. Adaptation of the SHSM is absolutely key here. It really is. How you can mold the SHSM, stay within the boundaries, but mold it so that other groups that normally wouldn't fit into this actually can be part of that. And when you're looking at the SHSM, how it can be focused, just remember what you look at depends on what you see depends on what you look at. It really, really does.
That's where I shine. I got a background in graphics design and marketing and whatever. I'll make this shine. I'll make it appealing to everyone.
Thank you, Brian. I believe, Jody, you're up next. Thank you.
Thank you. I completely understand this is a pilot program, and you spoke about expanding, and so I guess this just falls back on my earlier comments, but I did want to be quite transparent when it comes to expanding to other schools. I would really like to see the data on this one, not simply anecdotal, but how many of those groups are being represented. And to follow up on Trustee Morris's point, where do they go after? Where do the students go after being part of the STEM model? So I think that a pilot program is a great place to find these things, but I'd really like to see some concrete answers at the end of the pilot before we look to expanding, to find out exactly what works, what doesn't, and what needs to be tweaked to make sure we serve everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. I believe next up is S.O. Kuzno.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. The point I just wanted to raise was regarding the question of demographics. We would need to collect that from the students, and it would be on a voluntary basis. Because the way we've collected the data right now has been anonymous, and the self ID information is not for this purpose. So there are very strict guidelines in terms of how we collect information. So it's not that it's impossible, but we would need to ask on a voluntary basis whether they want to disclose any additional demographic data.
Thank you. Brian, just one last
Thank
question.
you very much. Chair Humphreys raised a really good point, and I've been thinking about this one as well. Having one's, I've always thought of this kind of idea as system-wide. We've learned a lot of lessons in the past couple of years with a gun to our head in terms of the pandemic. You know, in terms of how we connect, classes in different schools, whether it be e-learning or whether it be v-learning. And v-learning, I think, holds a lot of promise where we can, connect schools across the county. Maybe the co-op experience that would be part of this program would be more difficult in some of the other areas. Absolutely true. But I think this is not just a program for one or two isolated areas. And I look at the concept of starting off with one pilot school. Well, I think that really misses the point to the program as being, available wider than just one school. And a natural fit for this program, if you're looking at ballot, would to include one more school, and that's Mackenzie. And yes, it doesn't fall under the SHSM, but in some of the courses to sort of round out the offerings that you can make to kids in both schools, but on a different basis, would be to have a v-learning component to tie if you don't have enough students for the physics in one school, and often you don't, even up in this northern part of the county, then tie them together. You don't need the SHSM, red seal and the red roll. They need the opportunity. I would really like you to look also at how to involve Mackenzie, because there are these two schools and the two science-based, if you want to call it, employers, CNL and Garrison Petalwala and Mackenzie and Valor. They are close to one another. They're a natural fit. To leave one out, CNL in particular, they're going to look at, well, wait a minute, an awful lot of our employees live in Deep River. Why aren't our students part of this as well? I would really like to see you take a look at including on some basis. It won't be safe. It can't be because they don't have this particular yet. How are you going to involve them? Otherwise, they're going to stick out like sore thumb as not being involved.
Thank you for your comments, Brian. Been a very robust conversations. Director Proponent, you just want to say one last thing?
I'll bring closure. So through you, Mr. Chair, just to square up with the Board of Trustees, and I appreciate Trustee Morris's comments. When this was brought forward, both in concept and to the board table, we had a motion in front of us to explore the notion of a STEM-based SHSM, which staff has done, and I thank staff for their efforts and ideas bringing this forward. What I'm looking for here, and I'll tie Trustee Morris's comments to it, is we don't have a formalized motion to put a program in place, and that's part of an operational piece that staff does anyway. But in to honor the exploration that we did, staff would like to proceed with preparation for the establishment of a STEM-focused SHSM at Valor J K-12 to school for the upcoming school year, because that work needs to start right now on that front. Adding another school to the mix of that is going to do one of two things. Either there's a magical fit, which staff will give the Board of Trustees our earnest effort to look at, but I don't want to delay the other, or it will hold the whole thing back because we're on the verge of staffing pieces going into next school year. So as a friendly move forward on this front, we'll look to ensure we've got that up and running, and that was part of what we were tasked with in the spring. We'll explore other connections to other schools, but as Superintendent Poirier mentioned, it's very complicated. And I want to make sure that element doesn't now jeopardize getting the whole thing started. And 5 weeks from now, if we can't make that happen, none of this moves forward. So I would like to just leave with the Board of Trustees what I agreed with, which was to bring forward that piece, get that up and running. We'll do the other exploration behind the scenes. If we can add it, we'll do so, but I don't want it now to jeopardize the move forward on this front, because doing one of these at multiple fronts in one site is going to bring some of the complexities that is going to make that a little tougher. So just to make sure I'm clear with the Board of Trustees as staff, we'll go forward with this getting started at Valor JK-12 school. We'll explore in earnest what Trustee Morris brought forward and other opportunities. I know in other areas such as, bubble technology, aerospace engineering, we'll keep those moving along, but not to delay the move forwardness, because we are shifting the focus of a particular teacher here who's going to need to put that bundle together in a way. And I want to make sure we're honest with our staff and we're being clear with the school. Adding other elements is going to make this more complicated, and I don't want it to jeopardize. So I want to assure we're leaving today's meeting with the move forward that we've agreed to, and then we will look at other pieces, including, because we do have some SHSM happening at multiple different sites, we'll explore that as well. But that's not how we've landed before today, and I don't want to jeopardize where we did land coming into today's discussion on this item.
If we're aiming at one particular, group of students, and essentially we can also serve another group of students by having some minor cooperation between the two schools that's not related to any SHSM. That could be a separate thing and parallel.
So perhaps we can separate that from this and come back to that so that we are.
I don't care whether, whether they're together, they're separate, as long as the opportunities are there for this other group of students that seem to be more peripheral, and that's reality, to this particular proposal. So.
As Chair, thank you everyone for all your robust comments and questions. I think that my fellow trustee, Brian Morris, I think he just wants to express the fact that he's seen this a long time coming, and that he just doesn't want to see the STEM side of it sort of, delayed any more than it has to. And yet I see our director's point of view. So I'm just sort of coming up the middle here saying, I see both, but it makes, I guess, sense timelines, what the director's saying. And yet I really hear that heartfelt caring of Brian Morris. Exactly. So I thank everyone for their comments, and I thank the presenters and Christian for bringing me forward. Appreciate it. And the last thing we need to bring to the Program and Student Achievement Committee is the Rethink Its Secondary Initiative Themes, Topics, and Report. And that's through Kristen Rydell.
And I'll have my colleague Krista Rakowski on up with me as well.
Oh.
So thanks very much, everyone. I have to be honest, coming into a district brand new, I couldn't have been presented with a better opportunity than working with Rethink at Secondary. It's been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to get to visit all of the secondary sites in each of the respective areas. More importantly, to get to meet staff, all staff, students, and to really listen to them. Plus, I've had the opportunity to travel most of the district, which has been really enjoyable. And the schools, as I say often, are absolutely phenomenal here. So second. Oh,
Turn your volume down.
okay.
Okay, is this the one here, I'm assuming?
It is, yes.
So everyone should be.
Okay, thank you. So to begin, this is a very brief presentation on Rethink at secondary. I know from a district point of view, as Director Buffoni, that this has been a conversation that started in the fall of 2017, was hoped to be launched in 2019, and in 2020 was put on hold in implementation, but not in mind. And now it is coming to fruition. So a couple of things with, I'm just waiting for Hannah here.
Just make sure here so people online can see it.
Experience to work with literally all stakeholders in the system. I do want to introduce Krista Rakowski as well. She is the system principal for student success and 7 to 12 programming. She has been working shoulder to shoulder with myself, executive council, for this project, and she has attended all of the sessions. So the areas of focus for, next slide, please, Krista, for the Rethink, and I really like the word rethink, but more importantly, I like the word reimagine. So reimagining what the secondary experience is going to be like for our high school students. So we looked at 5 areas. We looked at program pathways. We looked at initiatives for student success. We looked at experiential learning, and Pete Burnett has also been to all of the sessions as well, and has been a key lead with this. We looked at virtual learning, and we looked at transitions to and from secondary school. At each of the sites as well, we included an other. So that was the request from the first site that we visited, and that was continuing education. The staff there said, let's put another, because there's lots of other things that we can include in this initiative. It should be noted too that at each of the sessions, and there have been 10 thus far in total, there has been representation from our Board of Trustees. There was representation from our former chair, Brian Morris. There's been representation of different executive council members, system principals, instructional coaches, as well as school-based staff. There was also opportunity for custodians to come in and share their thoughts, educational assistants, office staff. So everyone was included in this process. So these 5 areas were really critical because basically they're the thread that is interwoven through all schools. It's not just something that we can look at what's happening inside the classroom, but basically what is the experience of students day to day? What's the experience that they have either through a 4 to 5 year period in which they're in a secondary school? What's their experience outside of the classroom, their connections to community, and their connections to virtual and learning environments in a global context. So next slide. So these are the dates, and we do still have one remaining, which is happening this Thursday at Mary Street with our central staff. But our first was the Continuing Education Center under direction of Superintendent Cousineau, and we met here on September 29th, and it was a wonderful session. We had everyone from Continuing Ed coming to partake, and it was, I was a little nervous at first. What are we going to hear? But basically, I just sat there and listened. And those of us who were, organizing the event, the main thing we said at the beginning of each of the sessions is we're here to listen. It's a safe space. We want your feedback, and certainly we want your new ideas. We also prefaced, understand there will be some changes that are going to take place. So some things noted here, we'll listen, validate, and give feedback, and certainly look at it for implementation. And there will be some things based on other initiatives, discussions with Board of Trustees and exec that will take place as well. Next, we went to the Student Senate. Was that an enjoyable day? Yeah. Yes. So that was early on as well, and it was the first Student Senate meeting, so they had the opportunity to share their input, and it was really critical in terms of voice from the students. At each of the school sites that we went to at lunch hour, that was a time when the principal had recommended students, so it was, students from various different clubs, students with different school experiences. students from different lived experiences and identity as well, who came and basically we just sat, we listened, we prompted them slightly with a few things, but they were really being heartfelt and honest in terms of what would improve their secondary school experience. One of the key things with the students that was critical is it was a very safe and respectful environment. And these are all the stakeholders that were involved. We also included our OSSTF representative, Christian Sell. He was at most of the sessions as well. And there is going to be a thought exchange that we collect the voice of all students throughout the system. And I'll talk about that a bit later, as well as our parents and guardians. So for the next slide, please. For the pathways, and this is just a very brief overview. So there you have a picture of Valor JK to 12 school, and then you have the library at Arnprior District High School. So in the program pathways, and we basically posted Post-it notes that were about this big on 6 different tables throughout, and had the administrative assistants basically record everything that was being discussed or documented on paper into a significant Excel sheet. But the conversations that each of the different prompts generated were immense. Probably the biggest was with the program pathways. So we looked at a variety of things in terms of, what are our course selections? What are pathway choices for students? That led into a lot of conversation about de-streaming. So de-streaming, as we've done this year with the grade 9 courses, and looking further, is it something that we might implement in other areas? We looked at our immersion offerings. We looked at our SHSM programs, school focus programs, connections to communities, but it also was a lot with timetabling as well. So certainly when we met with guidance, and we also had social workers come and have discussions about us, how can we best timetable the school to really meet student needs and provide the best experience for students at the best time of day in terms of where courses and such are placed. There were other operational matters that were discussed here as well. Next slide. So this is a picture of the student group from Opiongo. So looking at student success initiatives and really looking at the types of data that we collect, how we use that data to inform our practice and next steps. So things like data from EQAO or data from our school survey, or it could be the data that we collect, the conversational data that we collect from the thought exchange, Google Forms, exit cards. So a number of things we use. Also, best practices of student success model. So what does it look like in each school? What does even the structure of the room look like? What are the opportunities for students to earn credits if they're struggling in a class? What is the graduation rate? Looking at types of tasks that they're doing in a student success model, re-engagement opportunities for students who may have left the system. And certainly all of this was anchored in students' lived experience and identity in terms of how we are responding. Next, please. So for the experiential learning, so this is, we're at Fellows here, and at each of the sites where we were, and many of you were there, that one period of the day, and it was usually the third period, led to a fireside chat. So for most of the sessions, for the periods, it would be, 6 different tables and different groups at each table. And then one period, everyone would kind of just come together and have a very honest conversation. And it was really an opportunity for staff to voice, what they thought, their experience, their ideas, and for we as certainly the trustees and senior staff to really listen and take note. I know leaving that many of the staff appreciated the openness and the authenticity of the experience. And certainly, as mentioned, we have considerable feedback for our next steps. But in terms of experiential learning, okay, looking at what opportunities are we providing for our students. So it could be within a classroom environment, but more importantly, outside of the classroom. It didn't have to be in a set program such as co-op. It could just be in a grade 9 math class. And what are we doing to foster that? Again, how are we extending learning outside the classroom? Connecting our schools to global communities. So there were a number of schools that would be engaged with partnerships. It's virtual, but with different schools in different countries. And very importantly, how are we equipping students with 21st century skills? Next slide. Also with experiential learning, and this is connected to the ministry, really core related skills to literacy and numeracy. So not just the fundamental of reading and doing mathematics, but looking more broadly at the foundations of literacy and numeracy as they apply to every subject and basically a student's day-to-day life. Again, looking at global competencies, what we want our students to experience in high school, but also to leave high school in terms of who they are as their character, their citizenship, their ability to communicate, think critically, collaborate, and most importantly, be creative and innovative. Experiential learning connected a lot to the big ideas of the curriculum. So this is really important because there were lots of questions that came up, about time, and we have to cover the curriculum. And the big ideas really lend to uncovering the curriculum and student learning within that space, and maybe looking at more things like big ideas as overarching tenets of a course versus specifics. And of course, the evolution of job shadowing and twinning and connecting to community partners. Next slide. So for virtual learning environments, for me, this was the most significant learning, not in terms of e-learning and what's offered in e-learning, but a lot was expressed about what was offered in e-learning, and particularly senior maths in an e-learning forum, and certainly listening to students and teachers of, is that something that is really enriching for both the student and the teacher. I liked the V-learning in terms of the partnerships that were established, certainly working when I was at MV, and many of their senior math courses are through V-learning and their connection to other schools, and just speaking to that teacher and their experience with teaching that. Looking at online requirements, and that's posted on our district webpage, and certainly the ministry has stated are required, but there is an opt-out form for that and what that's going to look like. Looking at spaces in which our students learn virtually, so Google Meet, D2L, and Brightspace, blended learning opportunities, continuing ed. Probably the site that had the most feedback is when we left, continuing ed said, can we send you a doc with all of our, the collection of voices of our staff? And the doc was 29 pages. And of course, re-engagement. So maybe students who, have difficulty attending school, and how can we engage them through an e-learning environment or an online environment. A big one was transition. So great partnership and collaboration with elementary, certainly students in grade 7 and 8, and connecting them to grade 9. So discussing things like school configurations. So one conversation, at Valor, JK to 12, what that looks like for student experience and staff experience as well, versus Arnprior, 9 to 12, or going to RCI, 7 to 12. So looking at those configurations, looking at transitions for students within those configurations, and thinking about some ideas for that moving forward. Certainly the most important was the transition from grade 8 to grade 9, and a lot of really rich discussions about how can we best equip students in grade 8 to transition into high school, and it not just being, one visit to the high school and doing a walk around, but different ways in which we can do that. Certainly graduating grade 12 to post-secondary or to workplace, or perhaps they're taking a gap year, and then just the regular transition from grade to grade. So a thought exchange is going to go out tomorrow morning. It is going to run until midnight on December 20th. And it has an introduction that will give our community and students just an overview of the importance of rethink and the 5 prompts in which we're discussing. And I had a lot of discussion with the person of whom oversees thought exchange because the original questions were too layered. He said, Kristen, keep it simple. And it was actually Ava. So I went to you or Taylor. That's when I went. Sorry, I know you're Taylor. Taylor, I went to you and Ava, and I asked you to craft a question, and it was Taylor and Ava who crafted the question, and basically it was very simple. So, as a student yourself, what do you feel would improve your high school experience, and how can we make that happen? So that will be launched tomorrow. There will be instructions. It's an opportunity for everyone across Renfrew County, students grade 9 to 12, parents and guardians, to give feedback to us. Myself and a couple of others will be prompted with the responses. And certainly, there's a disclaimer about being respectful and all the necessary things that one should say. And then we will look at that as a piece of data as well to inform our next steps. The collection of data, the collection of conversations, I'll call it, is really critical. So we have a significant, as Amy here can attest to, a Excel sheet that has a tab for each of the schools and for the Student Senate for all of the prompts, including other. And it basically captures anything that anyone said, wrote down, and shared with us afterwards. So we are looking at all of that, and I'll turn it over to Director Buffoni in a moment to say how we're going to gauge all of that information. We also have something else, which I'll leave to Director Buffoni to talk about to help us really get an in-depth look at our system in connection to these 5 areas. And then, of course, we have the thought exchange to extend to our community. Next slide. So that is a picture of the students at Fellows. Fellows stands out because every picture I took, it has a yellow background. So great, great space, but a highlight, honestly, was really listening to the students. Very smart, very articulate, and very, very brave, very, very brave in terms of what they were telling us and what they want for their future. So on behalf of all of us, to the Student Senate and to Ava and Taylor, certainly appreciate your work in this initiative. I don't want to say this is just the start. It feels like it because now all the work has to take place. But this is just a very brief overview. There will be a far more, much deeper discussion at board on December 20th.
Thank you, Superintendent Rattel, and a huge thanks for, I think you're absolutely right. It is sort of the start of the work ahead. A couple of comments, and I'm so grateful that both system principals, Burnett and Rakoski, are here for joining us as constant threads at each of these meetings from their perspective and experiential learning, and of course the secondary level respectively. Really appreciate all your time and effort to be here. 2 points to add. One, the information that came on the sheets we've handed to a research officer, a retired research officer from the Algonquin and Lakeshore Catholic District School Board. Her name is Teresa Bailey. She's going to run all of the text through a software called NVivo, N-VIVO. It's essentially a text analysis software that pulls trends in as objective a manner as possible to provide an executive summary of here's what's been said by theme and by site, as well as a system overall, which I think will be very helpful. I think each and every one of us would go to any sheet of paper and look at it on a number of layers. And sometimes I know I can speak for myself for what I would like to see from the sheet versus something I may not like to see from the sheet. And so that's going to be an important piece. Second one for the Board of Trustees on the 20th of December will bring forward a series of conceptualizations. They're not recommendations. They're just ideas coming from what's emerged from all the feedback, as well as the direction we've been given moving forward for the board to think through over the holiday period and then come back in the new year with more formalized recommendations around the secondary school review. Again, the next sort of 4 to 8 week period is very important in order to make decisions for the upcoming school year, because most of that kicks into place shortly after the start of the new year, sometime around the mid-year mark of February. So really looking forward to the work. Thank you to Superintendent Riddell and all of staff for making the time and full days, as well as the Board of Trustees were able to make time. And again, my apologies. I started the morning apologizing with bouncing dates and times. I'm going to end the day with apologizing. We had to shift a number of dates and times for these sessions due to the challenges of the labor situation and respecting our employee groups. And so we ended with a series of dates we didn't begin with, but we're grateful to have got those consultations in. So thank you.
I know it's been a long day, but are there any questions or comments? Anything else? So I have one. Okay, you go ahead.
I just want to say this is a humongous task, and I'm really glad you're not giving us like the tome of things that it would be if you actually gave us all the information. But certainly such value in getting out just to talk with staff and students, and it'll be interesting to see what you get from the parents and guardians as well. Looking forward to that. So thank you for all the work and the commitment and time commitment that went into these consultations. And I know I've heard anecdotally, and I'm sure most of the trustees have too, from various staff who said, that was really interesting. And, I really said what I thought, and I hope there's something come of it. That's the other part of it, right? I hope you heard what we said, and we're looking forward to what's next. So really well done, and thank you for all the time and effort you put in. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Just one comment. The Ava Taylor question, great question, straight up front. Just wondering if we could put on a blitz like on school announcements or something to say, hey, let's go for this across the district, and just say, hey, just barrage it because for a short period of time. Because when's it being done? You said.
So tomorrow morning, a message will go out.
Yeah. Okay. Just maybe even just if they could just throw one on an announcement, morning announcement, just a suggestion.
I could reach out to our senators, if you'd like. Does the email go out to all students, like all student emails, or are they going?
Turning it over to
Yeah. Yeah, so the school messenger will be sent to the parents and guardians, and then it will also be sent to the students directly to their RCBSB emails.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can ask our senators to maybe put that on the students.
Yeah, be good promotion because it will be in their inboxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Stay tuned.
And that's it. I had a brain cramp earlier and I wanted to make a motion after the first one, but now we're on the fourth one, which I should make a motion. I'd like to make a motion for adjournment. Do I have a seconder? Leo's, yeah, okay. Leo, okay. All in favor? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
I guess we have one more committee. Don't need a comfort break before we go into finance and resources? Are we okay just to carry on? Okay, we'll turn it over. Okay. And
A lot of ways for.
exactly. And then that's trustee Morris, please. Yeah.
Great, everybody's thinking about supper and it's been on the table for 20 minutes at home and we're supposed to finish by 5:30 and let's save the best for last. There you go. Okay, let's call the meeting of the Finance and Resources Committee for today, December the 6th, 2022 into session. I first have a motion to set the agenda. Okay. Trustees Humphreys and Jeanette, all those in favor? Okay, carried. Is there any conflict of interest, any declarations of conflict of interest as based on the agenda as seen? Seeing none, we'll just move on then. Full item for a closed session, so I'd like to move that we go into closed session. Have a seconder, please. Okay, trustee Humphries, thank you. And all those in favor? Okay, motion carried.
There you go.
And that brings
Thank
us to the end of the agenda. And my gosh, I think that's actually 5 and then 30 and then 15. We got 4 minutes to spare. Anything else? I have a motion for adjournment. Trustee Doherty, secondly by trustee Gannett. All those in favor? Vote to speak. Thank you very much.
Thanks.